Now section 7.3, static class members. I think you have already know about static method, but I will explain more detail here. Static class members. Recall that a static method is one that can be invoked through its class name. Okay, so for example, the methods of the math class are static. So I think it's chapter 2 or 3. You used math class methods like this: class name math dot method name, because SQRT is declared as a static. So actually in API, you can see that SQRT is declared as a static. And POW, this is another math method. This is also another math method. POW is also declared as a static. Okay, so we usually at first like this. At first we create an object M, and then using this object we call the method. Okay, this is the formal way. This is a way to call the method using object. But if the method is static, then we don't have to do like this. Okay, and actually we cannot make an object of math class. So static method can be called using class name. We declare static methods and variables using static modifier. Okay, it associates the method or variable with a class rather than with an object of the class. Okay, so static methods and static variables are related with a class, not object. It means like that. Static methods are sometimes called class methods. Static variables are sometimes called class methods. Okay, because static methods and static variables are related to a class itself. Okay, not an object. Then let's carefully consider the implications of each. At first, I want to show you how we define static. Okay, so here, data A is not static. This is called non-static. Okay, so data A is instance variable. It means that every instance will have data A. Every instance should have data A. So this is instance variable. And if you put static here, if you have a static here, this time data B is a static static variable. Okay, it means that every object will share data B. Data B is a class variable. I will explain it soon. Okay, and this is a static method. Okay, public static void show. This is class method. Okay, and this one is non-static method because there is no static here. Okay, so I think you can see what are static methods and what are non-static methods, or static variables or non-static variables. Normally, each object has its own data space. But if a variable is declared as static, only one copy of the variable exists. Like this, you can put static before or after private modifier. Okay, so private static float, static private float, private static float, both are okay, but this is recommended. Always at first access modifier and then static modifier. Okay, this is recommended. Memory space for a static variable is created when the class is first referenced. What does this mean? This means that even if we don't create an object, the static variable exists in the memory. Okay? So all objects instantiated from the class share its static variables. Share is static variables. Change the value of a static variable in one object changes it for all others. I will show you an example, then you will understand what what these 3 means. Okay. Here, class data. There is a class data. It has 2 members. Okay, 2 members. One is data A and the other is data B. And data A is static member. Okay, so it is class variable. And data B is non-static, so it is instance variable. And in the constructor, data A and data B are initialized. Okay, both are initialized. And here, this is the main method. In the main method, if we run this code, data A in class data will be printed out first. And see here, this is important. See, data A is called with class name, right? Class name is data. Class name dot data A. Data A is a static member here, static member, okay? So, like this, there is no object. In the main, there is no object. There is no new keyword. This means that there is no object here, okay? Even if there is no object, we can use static member data, okay? So here, 100 will be printed out. Okay, 100 will be printed out. And then here one more time, class name dot static method, static variable. Okay, so in data class, static member data A will be increment by 1. Okay, so data A becomes 101. So after this, data A in class data will be printed out, and here 101 will be printed out here. Okay, so the important thing is that the static variable exists even if no object is created. Okay, this is the static. This example is very important, so please try to understand this one. Data class has 2 variables. Data is non-static and count is static. Okay, so every object will have data member, but count the static member will be shared by every object of the class data. Okay, and this is the constructor. In the constructor, D will be assigned to data and the static member count will be incremented by 1. And this is toString method. toString method. toString method is just print out data and count. Okay. And here, data test will use data object. So here at first, D1. Object D1 is created. I will show you the diagram of this. So D1 will be printed out. Then you can think that the static member count is in the memory even if D1 is not created yet. Okay, so even if there is no data object in the memory, you can think that the static member already exists in the memory. Okay, so you can think like that. Just before creating the first object, the static member is already exist. Okay, then D1 is created like this. D1 has data member and the first value is 100. Okay, then in the constructor, count is incremented by 1. So count becomes 1. Okay, so this is D1. Now D2 is created. So at this line, constructor will be called. Okay, so D2 is created like this and data member is 200. Okay, and count is incremented by 1. So count becomes 2, right? Count becomes 2. Okay, so this is D2 object. Can you see here? Count is shared by D1 and D2. Okay, this is a static variable. Can you understand this one? This is very important. The static member is shared by all objects of that class, and it exists. It exists even if there is no object. Okay. Okay, I will show some important thing here. This is employee object, employee class. It has 3 members. Here, ID and name are instance variables, right? Because there is no static keyword. Okay, so it is instance variable. Every object will have ID and name. And count is static. Okay, count is static. So it is class variable. Every object will share count. Okay, and count will be created even before the first object. Okay, even there is no object of employee, the count variable place, the place for count variable is in the memory. Okay, and this is constructor. In the constructor, static member count is incremented by 1. Okay, then what is the purpose of count here? What is the purpose? The purpose of the count is when constructor is called, count is incremented by 1, right? So count will have the number of objects created so far. Okay, and this is set of methods and getter methods. Get ID, get name. Okay, set ID, set name. Okay, and setters and getters. And this is get count. Here we have static. Okay, here we have static. And this method has just return count. Okay, get count will do returning count. Okay, and here the important thing is that this one. This is important. The static method can only use static members. Okay, so get count will return count. Okay, this is static. This is static. Okay, so I declared get count method as static, and this is an important rule in Java. The static method can only use static members. So get count is static, then only static members can be inside get count. And one more thing. Non-static method can use both static members and non-static members. Okay, this is very important. Static members can only use static members. Non-static members can use both static and non-static. Okay, this is an example here. ToString method. This is non-static, right? There is no static, so this is non-static method. And ID is non-static variable, and name is a static variable. See, non-static method ToString uses non-static variable ID and static variable name. Okay, so this rule applies here, right? So please remember this one. The static method can only use static members. Non-static method can use both static and non-static members. Okay. Let's see the class employee test. It has main method. In the main method, we will create 3 objects of employee. Employee class has 4 variables like this, 2 non-static variables and 1 static variable count. Okay. So count is static. It means that count is shared by these 3 objects. Okay, so I will show the process of creating objects here in the bottom. Okay, so at first EMP1 is created. However, the static member will be created. Okay, even there is no object. So before the first object is created, the count variable exists in the memory. So like this, count is 0. Okay, these member variables, this is not a local variables, right? This is not a local variables. This is member variables in the class. Okay, member variables are declared. When it declares, it is initialized. Okay, it is initialized automatically. Local variables don't be initialized automatically. We must initialize local variables. But member variables of the class is initialized. Okay, so count is initialized like this. And emp1 is created. emp1 is ID 111 and Steve Jobs. Name is Steve Jobs is created. So even if we cannot see, there is a connection. Okay, there is a connection. Then count is incremented by 1. Because in the constructor, count is incremented by 1. Okay, so in the constructor, ID is initialized with this value, and name is also have this Steve Jobs, this value. Okay, and then count is incremented by 1, so count becomes 1. Okay, then now I will create the second object emp2. emp2 is created like this, and then it is connected to count. Okay, and ID and name are 123 and Bill Gates. Then count is incremented by 1, so count becomes 2. Okay, and next emp3 is created. So emp3 is created like this. And emp3 also has a connection with count. Okay, then count is incremented by 1. So actually count is 3. Okay, so now emp1 also has count 3. emp2 is also has count 3. Okay, because count is shared by these 3 objects. So the important thing is that the static variable already exists. Okay, already exists before creating the object. And static member count is shared by emp1, 2, and emp3. Okay, this is the static method. This is the static variables. Let's see this code. emp1 is created using these values. Okay, and I print out emp count. Okay, after emp1 created, I called getCount method. getCount method just return count. Okay, return count. So here, after emp1 created, the count is 1. Okay, and emp2 is created. When emp2 is created, count becomes 2, right? Because in the constructor, count is incremented by 1. So every time the object is created, the count is incremented by 1. So after this second object, I print out count here one more time. This time, after emp2 created 2. Okay, the count is 2. So count is incremented by 1. And here, emp3 here. Yeah, this time also after creating this third element, third object, I printed out the count. This time the count is 3. It is incremented by 1. Okay. And then I print out emp1, 2, and 3. This is the result of this system.out print line. Okay. So the important thing is that there is only one count variable. Okay, shared by these 3 objects. Now static methods. A static method can be called without creating an object. This is the same concept, right? Static variables can be used without creating an object. Likewise, static method can be called without creating an object. When calling a static method, use class name. Okay, use class name because we can use a static method even without creating an object. Okay, so we use class name. A static method also can be called by object name. And here there is a helper class. Class name is helper, and it has only one method, cube. Okay, and cube is a static method like this. Okay, then we can use this cube method without creating an object. So we can just call this cube using class name helper dot cube. Okay. Let's see this static method example. So here, class static test, it has two methods. One is find sum and main method. Okay. You must write main method like this: public static void main. Okay, string args. So here you can exchange public and static. Okay, public and static, you can exchange it, but this is much better. This is recommended form. At first, access modifier and static modifier. Okay, so in the main method, I have one integer. I have one integer input, and then here find sum. Find sum, data is just received input. Okay, then find sum will be executed. Here, the important thing is that the method find sum must be declared as static. This is important. Okay, because there is a grammar here, the main method must be declared public static. Must public static. Okay, main method must be declared as public static, and this is the grammar. The static methods can only call static members. Okay, static methods can only call static method. Main must be static, so any methods that are called by main should be static. It means like that. That's why find sum method declared as static. That is the reason. Okay, so up to now you made a lot of methods. Okay, at the time I told you you must declare them static. Okay, this is the reason. Therefore, the method called from the main method must be declared static. Okay, this is very important. If you don't have a static here, then there is a compile error. You cannot run this code. Okay. Let's see this example. Public class data has two methods, hello and check. And as you see here, both are declared as a static, right? Static. Okay. So in another class, the static method test, it has main method. In the main method, we call hello and check using class name like this. Is it okay? Is this okay for you? Yes, it is. Because hello and check are both static methods. It means that these two methods can be called using class name. Okay, the static method can be called without creating objects. At the time, we can use class name, right? So this is okay. A static method can be called without creating an object. When calling a static method, use class name. Okay, use class name. And actually, we can do like this. We can create data object X like this, and then using this name, we call these two static methods. This is also okay. Okay, so this is also okay. A static method also can be called by object name, but this is better. Okay, this is better because hello and check are for the class, not for an object. Okay, static means like that. Static means for the class, not for the object. Okay, objects share the static members. And I will talk about main method. Okay, up to now I didn't explain why main method should be static. Now I will explain that. Okay, at first main method you can write both public static void main or static public void main, But I told you before, by convention, visibility modifiers come first. Public, protected, private are visibility modifiers. Okay, so public, static, void main. Static, public, void main, both are okay, but yes, this is preferred. Okay, this is preferred. Okay, because visibility modifier will be the first. Okay, that is the recommendation. Then think about it. Why main method is static? Why main method is static? If we want to use main method, we must create an object. Okay, we must create an object of a class that has main method. Okay. If we want to use method, then at first we must create an object of the class that has that method, right? So if we want to use main method, then we must create the object of the class that has main. Does it make sense? Yes. But there is no way to create an object of the class that has main. Okay, it is just when you run the code, it was just invoked by the compiler, Java interpreter. So we must declare main method as static because there is no way to create an object of the class that has main. Okay, so it is invoked by Java interpreter without creating an object. So main should be declared as static. And this is also an important rule, Java grammar. The static methods cannot reference instance variables. Okay, I told you before. The static methods can only use static members. Okay, this is why. Because instance variables don't exist until an object exists. Okay, so this is important. However, non-static method can reference static variables or local variables. Okay. Let's check this one. Okay, this is circle class. Circle class has static method, static member data, and non-static member data, pi and radius. Can you imagine why pi is static? Pi is defined as this value. Okay, pi is defined as this value. So every object does not have to have this value. Okay, so there is only one pi. That is enough for all objects. So I declared as a static. Okay, and this is the constructor, and this is the area and the perimeter. See, area method and perimeter method are not static. Okay, they are non-static. There is no static keyword here. So area and perimeter methods are static, are non-static. Yeah, I'm sorry, non-static. So it means that area and perimeter methods can use both static member and non-static member. Okay, so here, area and perimeter are non-static methods. Non-static methods can use both static and non-static members. Okay. So it shows that. Okay, so non-static methods can use both static and non-static members. Okay, remember this one. And here, another class, data. It has two members, data 1 and data 2. Data 1 is non-static and data 2 is static. Okay, and this is the constructor. This is the constructor. We don't put static in the constructor. We only put static in the member data and methods. Okay, and print method. This is non-static. Non-static method. So non-static means that static member or non-static member can be used. Okay, so print is non-static member. Oh, sorry, print is non-static member. So we can use non-static data and static data. Okay, so this is okay. And here, I changed print method as static. Okay, in the previous page there is no static here, so print was non-static member. So print can use static, non-static member. Okay, but this time I changed print method as static. It means that print method can only use static member. So if I changed the method as static, then this line will occur compile error. Okay, because data 1 is not static. And this is the error message. Cannot make a static reference to the non-static field data 1. Can you understand this one? Static method cannot use non-static method. It means like that. Okay, so this is important. So only just remember that the static method only use static members. Okay, you can only think that. Then there is no confusion, I think. Okay, let's see one more example. The grammar is important. Okay, so the important thing is that here static methods only can call static member. Okay, so let's see one more example. Here data class has two members, data 1 and data 2. Data 2 is static. Okay, this is constructor. Constructor can use both static and non-static. Okay, because data cannot, the constructor cannot be static. Okay, and print1 method is non-static method. Okay, and print2 is static method. Okay, so static method only can use static member. Here data 2 is a static member. Okay, and in the main here the object x is created, and x dot print 1, x dot print 2, data dot print 2. These 3 lines is okay for you? Think about this one. 3 lines are okay? Yes, this is okay. As you see here, print 1 is non-static. Okay, print 1 is non-static. So it's non-static. So it must be called using an object. Okay, so print 1 is non-static. So print 1 must be called using object. Okay, and print 2 is static. Print 2 is static. So it means that it can be called through an object name or class name. Okay, both are okay. Okay, now let's look at the code example from the textbook. Okay, sometimes static methods and static variables often work together. Okay, this is because static methods can only use static variables. Okay, so we will see the example from the textbook of a slogan objects. Here, class slogan has 2 data members, string, phrase, and static and count. Okay, here equals 0. You can omit this. You don't have to do this. Okay, even if you don't have this one, the member variables are always initialized automatically. And this is the constructor. Okay, see here count is incremented by 1, and this is toString method. Okay, and this is static member method. Static method get count. Get count has return count. This is a static member. Okay, because a static method can only use a static member, so return count is okay. And here slogan object. Okay, only the name is created here, and create a new object, then print out obj. Okay, then here this is the toString method will be called here, right? So phrase is remember the alarm is printed out, and next obj will be assigned by another new object. Okay, so don't worry, be happy will be printed here. Likewise, live free or die is printed out. Okay, like this. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 objects. Okay, there are 5 objects will be created in the main. Okay, because there are 5 new. Okay, every time we call new, we use new, object is created, right? So there are 5 slogan objects are created. And then enter. This is just a new line. Okay, new line. And then slogans created get count here. Get count becomes 5. And this count object will be shared by all the objects. Okay, all these 5 objects. So slogans created colon 5 will be printed out. Can you understand this one? Okay. Okay, finally, let's do some quick check. Why can't a static method refer to an instance variable? Why can't a static method refer to an instance variable? I told you that. It is because instance data is created only when an object is created, right? But we can use static data, static method without instance, right? So we don't need an object to execute a static method. So, and even if you had an object, which object's instance data would be referenced? Okay, so you just know that static members can be used without creating an object. That's why we cannot use instance variable in the main method. Okay, is it clear? Okay, this is section 7.3.